This is LBC with Matt Frei. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
So you may remember that one of the biggest defeats suffered domestically by Donald Trump this year was that his hand was forced by Congress and by rebels in his own party to basically release the Epstein files en masse before Christmas. And much of that happened last night, overnight, during the day. Tens of thousands of pictures and documents from the grand jury, testimony, etc., all dumped. One massive data dump of Epstein shame, except a lot of the stuff has been redacted. And of course, to the conspiracy theorists on either side of the political aisle, this means that Donald Trump is still trying to hide things. There were some embarrassing highlights as well. So if you are in the Clinton family, gathering around the Clinton Christmas tree, you might have to explain why Bill Clinton, the former president, appears in several pictures to be in a hot tub close to Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. A little bit embarrassing, I have to say. I think anyone who doesn't wear the full armor of clothing or a suit in the company of Epstein, including our former ambassador, Lord Mandelson, has a few questions to answer, and that would be one Bill Clinton as well. But anyway, there's lots of stuff there, and luckily we can say that Simon Marks will be discussing this with us, and I just have to also add that he is he's a surprising but very welcome Christmas bauble, because he will be taking your calls over the Christmas period from 7 p.m. I think most days. He's come over to this part of the country, so to this part of the ocean, and he'll be on LBC at 7 o'clock taking your calls about all sorts of things. Simon, good morning.
Good morning to you, Matt. Happy Christmas almost.
Thank you very much. It sounds as if you're out Christmas shopping, but that's okay.
I am, exactly that, precisely. So apologies for the background noise.
But the quality of the line is so spectacular, we're not going to quibble. So tell me about this latest dump, and the dump it was.
Well, indeed, but of course not what the law requires. And this is a law that Donald Trump himself signed. So he now, I think, in very short order, is going to be accused of breaking a law that he just signed a couple of weeks ago, because instead of releasing all of the files in the government's possession, they've only released about 100,000 documents, 13,000 separate files, and it is absolutely apparent that this is yet another extremely selective release. There is barely any mention of Donald Trump in the documents that were released last night by the Department of Justice, but there are ubiquitous mentions and, as you suggested, images of Bill Clinton in a hot tub with a woman whose face is redacted. And I think it's worth underscoring, Matt, that nothing in any of these photographs proves any kind of criminal activity whatsoever. It's all being inferred and implied through the selective release that the White House has engaged in, as President Trump continues to claim that Republicans have no problem with Jeffrey Epstein, but Democrats do. And so I think that the White House is going to be fairly accused of stoking in the last 24 hours the nagging sense, particularly among the president's Make America Great Again supporters, that there is a cover-up taking place over these documents.
Do you think that the American public will get bored of the Epstein files? Because, you know, as we know, one of the favorite things that this administration does is to flood the zone with all sorts of things, and I won't mention what they are. But, you know, you flood the zone with names and pictures and, of course, redactions as well. And only the kind of hardcore conspiracy theorists will be left at the end of the day wanting to know the truth, and everyone else will say, for goodness sake, can we just move on? Is that the intention?
Yes, I mean, I think Private Eye, for example, is going to have a field day over the redactions that are contained in these documents. There's a 119-page file of grand jury investigations into Jeffrey Epstein, and every single page and every single line on it is redacted. There's a wonderful image that you can actually see on the LBC website that has a list of masseuses who were available to be called upon for Jeffrey Epstein and his guests, and every single line of the document is completely blacked out, with the Department of Justice saying they are doing so in order to protect witnesses and victims. I think that this in many ways is very similar to Donald Trump's efforts, you'll recall, to run out the clock on the release of his tax returns when he was running for the presidency. And he simply proved very capable of constantly distracting the public away from that issue, constantly kicking it into the long grass with a whole variety of claims that he'd love to put them out, but he couldn't because he was under IRS audit. You know, there were loads of excuses and reasons why they couldn't be furnished to the public. And I think that he will engage in very similar efforts at distraction this time round, but he's going to have a problem with his core supporters and with people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, the Republican congresswoman who has broken with him this week over his shameful comments about Rob Reiner following the murder of Rob and Michelle Singer Reiner in Los Angeles. So there are enemies within politically for Donald Trump, and he's going to have to be very careful about that.
Are the enemies within, as the fracture inside the MAGA world, more serious for him than what the Democrats might be up to?
Yes, I think so. I mean, the Democrats also, within the last week, as you know, Democrats on the House Oversight Committee released some more selective images. And I thought it was notable that one of those was a picture of Bill Clinton. It almost seemed that Democrats on the House Oversight Committee were sort of signaling to the rest of the party that if they have to sacrifice the honor of Bill Clinton in order to be seen as being vigorously backing calls for all the files to be released, because they sense that's a political winner as well. I think they were signaling that they were willing, if necessary, to, sell Bill Clinton down the river. And then, of course, we see more images of the former president in these documents, but laughably, no images and no reference, really, no meaningful references to Donald Trump. You don't have to be one of the Make America Great Again conspiracy theorists to look at this and say something is up.
It doesn't look great for Bill Clinton, to be honest, but then lots of things in his past haven't looked great for Bill Clinton. Is there any more embarrassment that he can actually suffer, and does it have any political impact?
Well, I mean, I think it goes beyond the question of embarrassment. I mean, are we ever going to see any evidence of criminal activity by any of these prominent figures who were associated with Jeffrey Epstein? And with each release of documents, there have to be some very nervous moments for lots of wealthy and powerful people in America.
But also people, across the pond. So, of course, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, as he's now called, there are more pictures of him in the files, which are not great. Richard Branson crops up, here and there as well, doesn't he? I mean, tell us about that.
Yes, and we'd seen Richard Branson actually in a previous image on a beach, sitting on a beach with Jeffrey Epstein walking behind him. There's a portrait of the two of them standing side by side in this latest release.
Simon, they were island neighbours. He had his island and the other guy had his island. They were just neighbours, right? Yeah. Now you've got your island, I have my island,
Yes, exactly that. And I think for Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, clearly there will also be nervousness about what is contained in the files. I mean, there wasn't anything incriminating that we saw in the release that was authorized by the House Oversight Committee Democrats, and there doesn't appear to be anything incriminating in what we've seen released last night. But everything and anything can help paint a fuller picture of the nature of the friendships and the relationships that these men had, both with Jeffrey Epstein and also with Ghislaine Maxwell. And I think there's still considerable interest in her situation here in the United States, over in the United States, I should say, as Ghislaine Maxwell continues to press either for a commutation of her sentence or a pardon by President Donald Trump.
Do you think it is possible for him politically to pardon her before the end of his term?
I think that it is politically possible for him to pardon her in the last hours and minutes of his presidency.
Right.
I do not see between now and then any immediate opportunity for him to do so without having come to the conclusion that, he's ready completely to write off his own reputation with his own political movement. And that seems at the moment unlikely. But look, he's the most unpredictable president in American history, as you know. Who knew a week ago he would dance on the graves of Rob and Michelle Reiner, and then, given a chance to walk it back, instead double down. I mean, that's the world in which we now live.
Who would have known a day before his inauguration that he would pardon all of the 1,400 convicts,
Yes.
of January the 6th? Final question to you, Simon. Given the fact that his opinion poll ratings, especially on the economy, are woefully low, given the fact that he doesn't really read the room and gives himself on the economic front an A++++ in terms of his performance, given the Epstein files, given the fact that, there were fractures within the MAGA camp, there was a rebellion in Congress which had been basically absent without leave for most of the second Trump presidency, have we reached peak Trump?
I think it's very difficult to know the answer to that question because his capacity to reinvent himself and his capacity to distract, particularly, he could tomorrow announce that he's declaring war on Venezuela and suddenly we'll all be heading off in a different direction in terms of our attention. His capacity to do that is untrammeled. There is no question that he's ending the year in difficulty. And on that issue, particularly of the economy, Matt, because, in America, it's always the economy stupid. 31% of voters in next year's midterm elections, only 31%, say they approve of his handling of the economy, and he cannot bring himself. I mean, we saw this in the primetime address a couple of days ago to the nation. We saw it 10 days ago at a rally in Pennsylvania. He cannot bring himself to say to the American people, I feel your pain. He insists that they are wrong when they correctly see prices rising, and he says they are falling. I mean, there's literally, a gravitational debate there about whether prices are truly rising, which his own government says they are. And he just can't seal the deal with the electorate because it involves saying I was wrong, which is just not something he's ever able to do.
And as I've always said, and I think you said to me as well, Simon, there's only one person who can defeat Donald J. Trump, and that is Donald J. Trump. And he's giving it a go this time, isn't he? As they say in America, it's the economy stupid. Well, here it's the stupid economy, and we'll be speaking about that at 11 o'clock. Listen, Simon, thank you very much. I wish you a happy Christmas and good luck with your 7 o'clock p.m. show where you'll be taking listeners' calls, and plenty of them, I'm sure.